name is Ayat and I'm a first year English student at Keble, obviously.
Hi, my name's Dorothy and I'm a third year English student at Keble.
Hi, I'm Ellen. I'm in second year at Keble studying English.
I'm Shona. I'm a fourth year studying English and Italian here at Keble.
I think everyone has a slightly different experience, so some people may interview at more or less colleges than I did, and some people may have more or less interviews than I did, but I just had 2 interviews and both of them were at Keble, which is the college that I applied to.
I was only interviewed at Keble, so I only had 3 interviews overall, 2 for English and 1 for Italian, and they were all kind of spread out over the course of one day. For every interview I received a kind of short unseen passage about half an hour or 20 minutes before the interview, so I had some time to read it through, make some notes, think about what kind of jumped out at me, what I thought was interesting, and sort of pick out some possible conversation points that could come up in the interview.
So I was given my unseen text like 20 minutes before the interview started and just put straight in a room to look at it and then taken straight over to the interview room, so you don't have time to compare it with other candidates.
So in 3 of the interviews that I had, I was given a few poems to look at about half an hour before, and I was sort of sat in a room just to study them for about, I think it was about 20 minutes or half an hour, and then I had the interviews like directly after that.
Each of my interviews was conducted by 2 people, and one of them had another person in the corner of the room who was typing things out. This is done to ensure fairness, to make sure that everything that you said is remembered properly. Almost everyone comes out of one of their interviews convinced that it went far worse than the other one, and they're almost always wrong. There's kind of no way to tell how your interview's going as you're doing it. The important thing is just to kind of listen really carefully and talk through your ideas and kind of try and enjoy it if that's possible.
I had 2 interviews, and in each interview I had 2 interviewers, and it was more or less what I expected, in the sense that it was just like it was an informal conversation about the matter at hand, basically the poems that we were looking at.
So when preparing for my interviews, I did a lot of very broad reading. Like, I had a few people tell me that I needed to know like something from every century and something from all different genres. So I tried to read a lot of poetry so I could quote a lot of authors, and I just tried to read really broadly. But in the end, that wasn't really the most useful approach, because I found that they just wanted you to think deeply rather than just sort of tick off things that you knew. Like, I didn't really find that they were asking me to list like all of the different classics that I'd read. It was much more that they wanted to see how I'd thought about what I had read. So the prep work that I did that was actually useful was just going through my personal statement and making sure that I knew like a lot about what I'd said, and that for every sort of sentence I could pick out things to say and give like different arguments for it. So I found having people, just like friends or family, just like look at my personal statement really quickly and then just say, what did you mean by this? And then just practicing saying things out loud and just practicing like verbalizing my thought process and trying to like sort of explain what I was thinking out loud, because you're not normally asked to do that. But in the interviews, they just want to see how you're thinking and how deeply you're like constructing arguments. So they totally understand if you freeze up, because obviously it's a very sort of nerve-wracking setting and you're probably been thinking about it for a while. So they understand that and will definitely let you take time, and they're not trying to catch you out or see sort of like how speedily you can do it, but they just want to hear how you're thinking and watch you kind of go through an argument. So I think just practicing speaking to people about the books that you have read and what you have studied and things that you know about, rather than just trying to sort of get lots of like Thomas Hardy or Dickens read. Just like knowing that you know about the text you're studying at school and what you put in your personal statement. I think that was most useful. And also getting used to just like quick close reading of poetry, because that was what 3 out of my 4 interviews were about. Just having a poem and then just having to talk out loud about what it was like, and not sort of, crack the original meaning or know anything about the context necessarily, but just being able to see something and just give your thoughts about it. I think that was most useful.
I had spoken a little bit about magical realism in my personal statement, and there was a brief question about how that might connect to the poem that I was looking at in one of my interviews. But other than that, there wasn't much else about my personal statement. It was mainly just looking at the piece of text in front of me and just kind of talking about that and like my opinions on that, and then kind of being probed a bit more to like expand on the points that I was making. I actually just really enjoyed my interviews. Like, I'm quite passionate about my subject, and so I was able to get excited about the actual work that I was doing. And I tried not to let nerves kind of get in the way too much, or like, you know, everyone has a bit of a fear of like messing up, but I think that just kind of detracts from what you're actually doing. The interviewers were really friendly, really genuinely interested in like my unique interpretation of the poems that we were looking at, so I just kind of focused on that, I guess. And yeah, it was really interesting.
I think beforehand I was very nervous, as most people were, because, you know, they're hyped up so much and I hadn't really heard much about exactly what they'd be like, and you hear lots of horror stories. But once I got in there, I found them much more just like conversations. Like, I didn't think they were really trying to sort of catch me out or ask me any trick questions. It felt like they were just trying to pull out my thoughts just to see how I sort of went about making an argument and how I went about thinking about things, rather than trying to sort of, you know, see how much I knew. And it did feel a bit intimidating when I was given poems, but I thought, oh, okay, somebody else will probably know who that author is, but I have no idea. But I don't think that's what really did matter, because they just wanted to see what I thought, and it felt like they were genuinely interested in what I was saying and just wanted to, yeah, just have a bit of a talk. Like, it felt much more like speaking to sort of a teacher at school who I know and who I, you know, could have like an easier conversation with, than speaking to somebody who was sort of very scary and formal. Like, it felt like they were trying to make you comfortable, and of course you're not going to be totally comfortable because you know that they're like incredibly clever and like that you are there for an interview. But yeah, it felt a lot less scary than I thought it would do.
Before I went into my interview, I was really stressed and was just convinced it was going to go awfully. But whenever I was in, I actually quite enjoyed it, because it is just like a really kind of interesting chat with some really, really clever people. And I remember being quite disappointed when it was over, because I was like, I still have so much more to say. Although as soon as I left, I was then convinced that I'd done awfully and had really let myself down, which obviously I clearly didn't, because I got in. So again, it's really hard to judge how they went. And also, yeah, everyone comes out of interviews being like, oh, I really regretted saying that, or I really think I could have done better on that question, but you just have no idea. It's natural to panic and misconstrue everything that you do and everyone else does, but you can't tell until it's done, so don't worry about it.
I think I'd imagined it to be probably a lot more sort of quiz-like. I think I'd sort of imagined, you know, they would like ask me a question and I'd have to give an answer, and then like there would be a sort of correct thing to say. But I think what I actually found was that it was more like I would sort of say something and they'd bounce off it, and then maybe we'd go off on a little tangent, and like there would be lots of different routes that we'd explore that didn't feel like it was sort of prescribed. Like, it didn't particularly feel like they were trying to like tick a box and say, yeah, we've asked you that, like, you know that, or you don't know that. It felt more like, oh, okay, let's just have a chat and let's just see what you know, what we know, what interesting things we can talk about. And it felt like they were just trying to sort of gauge the dynamic of what it would be like to talk to you about your ideas.